So yeah, cool. So we're gonna do a commentated run for the people. So get started in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so the first thing we do at the start of the run, we start. Oh, why did I make Roberta noises? That's funny. So the first thing we do is we load into Act 1 as Tor, and he like grows up on the family farm. What the fuck is going on? This game is weird. Anywho, we're gonna start off by immediately going out of bounds. All you gotta do is just jump up the hill, turn around, and you can grab the sledge. And then I'm gonna hold down L2, and we're gonna start falling down this way. So whenever you're out of bounds in this game, there is a infinite floor at y equals 0. And when I say infinite, I mean infinite. And so if there's nothing that the game thinks you should be standing on, then you'll just be kind of on this invisible floor at the bottom of the world in most cases. But if the game thinks there is a bit of geometry above you that you should be standing on, it'll teleport you from this invisible floor to be right up on top of it. And that's called an upwarp. And we're going to be doing that on purpose a couple of times here in order to sort of get in and out of bounds. So this game is sort of like loosely open world with like seamless loads and stuff like that. And the way that they achieve that is by various loading triggers put throughout the game, such as like inside of like hallways and stuff. So it all looks like one seamless world. So what I'm doing here is I'm upwarping on purpose here, and that's going to cause this next area to load in, which is going to be sort of taking us towards our next destination here. And then you're going to see me hopefully get another one right here. Our goal right now is to get to Shadow Glen Woods, and by hitting all of those loading triggers, you can see those sort of dark trees in the background. I've successfully spawned in like the trigger to open up Shadow Glen Woods. Now, normally this is like an area you're not supposed to get to until like much later into Act 1. But we already like skipped all the tutorial and stuff. So what I'm going to do instead is remain out of bounds here and then touch the transition that loads in Shadow Glen here while staying out of bounds. Normally the tunnel is like blocked, I believe. Like there's a text box saying you can't go here yet. But if we do this, we can sort of stay out of bounds and retain our out of bounds movement. And then we can use our upwarping trick again to get back in bounds here. So there's like a bunch of random geometry out here that like you're never supposed to see. And so we kind of have to like memorize where to go based on like visual cues and what we're seeing kind of in the background here in order to have an idea of where we are. Get an upwarp right there, and then walls are one way, so we can just jump back in bounds, and we are in Shadow Glen Woods. So normally you come here as part of the main story in order to save your little sister from a boss monster. But we're just going to go over here and pick up this flower and then fall into the water. That's all we need here, so we're just going to go ahead and exit. I'm going to do a little bit of menuing in advance. Something that you're going to see me do at the end of, as I exit Shadow Glen, is we're going to see that text box that prevents us from entering here casually. I'm going to jump into it. The purpose of this is that the jump gets interrupted midair, and while you're jumping, your gravity is actually at 1/3 of its normal value. And so we sort of capture that sort of low gravity while we're running on the ground. And that's really important to set up a trick called L2 jumping right here. So I set it up right there, and you can kind of see I just sort of like lightly fall out of midair, but I still kind of have the low anti-gravity. And that's going to allow me to do L2 jumping here, which is where I run with L2, let go of L2, and then press jump on the next frame, which actually gives me an extended jump, which allows me to not only clear to that 4-leaf clover patch early, but also get out of bounds, which lets me skip like the broken bridge parkour segment that you're normally supposed to do. And this will take us into Meridel here. So that's going to be our first major destination now that we have our flower from Shadow Glen, as well as sort of getting out of the tutorial. What you're going to see me do as I enter Meridel is open up the consumables menu, and I'm holding down square, as you can see on the input display. We're not exactly sure why this works, but there's a bug where if you do this trick where you open up that consumables menu and hold square, it will basically auto-mash the dialog boxes from any cutscene for you, so long as you don't press the square button to initiate them. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm just holding down the square button through this entire cutscene. There's a lot of text that's going to come up after a package comes flying out of the air. And it's going to just go and skip all the text boxes for us. Again, not super sure why that works, but it does, which is cool. So yeah, it just goes right through right there. So if you ever see me holding down square during a cutscene, and you're like looking at the input display, that's why. It's also just outright faster than if a task can mash, if I remember correctly. So our next stop is to do a little bit of shopping. But before we can do that, we have to chase down the bandits here. Because the bandits prevent us from going into any of the shops until we've seen the necessary cutscene here. So we're going to chase them down, and then we're going to do a really cool glitch that was sort of developed over the past couple years called the infinite money glitch. Now, when we picked up that flower, it's actually a side quest item for the potion shop vendor in this village. And when we turn in the flower, he'll give us 500 Neopoints. But more importantly, the sort of side quest dialogue box will get stored into an active portion of the game's memory and will stay there until overwritten by another text box. And we're going to make use of that property in order to essentially duplicate this quest reward. So you're going to see me talk to Angus one more time here. He's going to give us 500 Neopoints. I buy a potion of Mirka Speed, which we'll talk a bit more about later. I'm going to start holding down X. So I have this pretty long text box stored in the game's memory. And when I hold down the X button, text scrolls faster, about 5/3 of a character, which means like 2 1/3 characters scroll by on screen every frame. And because of that and some weird rounding error that accumulates at the end of the text box, essentially, we skip past processing the Null Terminator character at the end of Guardsman Ulfric's first dialogue box. And because these lines of dialogue are so short, it actually didn't remove the back end of the side quest dialogue that actually gives us the money. So if I repeat this process over and over, it reads into that dirty area of memory and repeats the part of the quest dialogue that gives me 500 Neopoints. So every time I do this 3 text box loop, I'm essentially getting 500 Neopoints out of thin air, which is why we kind of went out of our way to set all that up. And we're going to farm here until we have 11,000 Neopoints, and then we're going to start buying a couple of things. So if we're like doing this during the actual whole GDQ deal, this would be where we like read donations. Unfortunately, draw out the dupe there because I was talking through it. Yeah, I did an extra dupe too, which is a little annoying. So this run's kind of shit, but yeah, it happens. All right, so with the money, we buy a sword. We need a sword in order to beat the game. We're also going to grab a shield. Normally, the game expects you to get your first weapon from your dad after completing the tutorial bit, but we completely skipped that. And then you're also kind of lightly intended, because you're broke at the start of the game, to get this wooden shield by winning it as a prize from the arena. But because we just sort of broke the Neopets economy by duplicating money out of thin air, we can just buy it from the lady for 500 instead. And so that's going to leave us with like 10 grand still in our pocket. And we're going to spend that all on consumables. So one of them you saw me get already, which is a potion of Mirka Speed that almost doubles our grounded movement speed. And we're going to buy enough of those to cover us for basically the rest of the run. But the other thing we're going to get is a potion of power. Potions of power double your attack power. And that's going to be used in a couple of key locations here. So we're going to grab 2 of them and then mash square here to get the rest of our potions of Mirka Speed. And then we're out of there. All right, so now that we're stocked up, we can go ahead and really get into some more sequence breaking. So this game is broken up into 4 acts. You have this first act where you get introduced to Tor and his quest to become a knight. We'll see Act 2 a bit later where we get introduced to Roberta and Faerie Land. Then the 2 characters sort of meet up together for Acts 3 and 4. And Act 3 sort of takes place back in the overworld. So what we're going to try to do with this sequence break is get to an area that's normally only accessible in Act 3 while we're still in Act 1. And that's going to allow us to get a really crucial quest item that's going to let us completely break the game wide open. So in order to do that, I'm going to go for a frame-perfect YOLO strat here. Oh, I actually hit it. That's tight. So there's a pause buffer method if you don't get that first try. But essentially, you're timing a sword slash on a specific frame where you sort of phase through the part of the hitbox that of the river that drowns you and puts you back on land. And so now what I'm doing now that I'm out of bounds is, again, I'm running between different loading triggers in order to load different areas of the map while still remaining out of bounds. And I have to be very careful where I go here because otherwise I can get teleported up into a river and this sequence break won't work. So what I'm looking for here is I'm going to start panning the camera up and to the left. And I'm going to be looking for this upside down cone. Once I see the camera flicker just like that, I turn, and that's going to upward me into this thing. So we are on the inside of Kagam Valley, and then I touch that plane right there and that just spawned in order to load in abandoned mines. This is an area where you're supposed to go to during Act 3 in order to save Kagam Village from the effects of the Darkest Faerie's control. But we can just access it just like that, and we got that first try, so that's really good. And so now we're going to be inbounds for a bit. We're going to grab a dark moat right there. Something that I do with all the new moats that I pick up is I actually jump into them in order to skip a moat collection dialog box that you get for the first time you ever get like a new collectible. And then on top of that, we're just going to be making our way through the caves here. We're going to be doing something a bit unintended here, where we can actually ride the minecart tracks. And instead of saving all of the Kagam villagers here, if we just save the mayor, that counts for quest completion. So we just get to leave early. And conveniently, that's also where the boss is. So we're just going to book it to the boss, taking a couple of shortcuts here through these minecart tracks. And we're going to be on our way there. So this would be another really good time during the event for like a quick donation raid, but we've got a little bit of tech to do during the boss fight that we'll talk about. Decent movement. And then right here, we're going to set up the text box glitch again. All right, so I'm going to do a stun lock here using a technique called shield canceling. I'm going to be doing 3-hit combos and then holding down the shield button, which is L1, at the end of each combo. That'll cancel some of the follow-through animation, and that'll allow me to start up a combo again before the boss has time to retaliate. This can be done on most enemies in the game, and this is going to sort of catch him in a continuous attacking animation and just let us one-cycle him immediately. So that was a pretty good fight. And so we take care of him. This is going to allow us to save the mayor. And then once we save the mayor, that hits a crucial quest flag that is going to allow us to get this really broken quest item that lets us do some nonsense. And if you've ever seen the speedrun before, you'll probably know where we're going with this, but I won't spoil the surprise if you haven't seen me do it yet. All right, so again, mid-air there, I'm actually setting up the dialogue skip glitch again, where I open up that consumables menu and then hold down square in order to just rapid fire skip through all the mayor's text here. Shouts to Jurgen. All the villagers have great names. We're going to be seeing a toddler, a little lizard named Tad. I think he's a Techo. So yeah, now that we're done with the boss, we're going to grab a couple of hidden Nova and Supernova motes on our way back. These won't come into play until a bit later, but it is pretty important that we grab those now. We'll want them for the final boss. But yeah, this would be a really great time during like the run for donations and stuff like that as we go and pick up our quest item. Something to note as well, I'm not going to be doing this during GDQ, but I actually have the music turned all the way down to 0. And that's because it saves time on load. So there's normally, when you have the music enabled, it tells the game to like run this bit of code to like load in potential ambient background sound effects. And if you have the music off, it doesn't run that code, so it like loads the game faster. Tad%. Just speedrun to talk to Tad. So what do we get for all of our hard work from the mayor after doing all that out of bounds? We get a potato sack. But this isn't any ordinary potato sack. This is a magical potato sack. And the big magical property of it is that it causes a boatload of lag, because whenever you equip it or de-equip it, it switches out your character model for a completely new one. And it has to load that data from the disk drive, and that takes a lot of time. And so because of that, that allows us to do a bunch of nonsense. So the first bit of cloak tech you're going to see me do is something called a mega jump, where I'm essentially going to use the lag generated by de-equipping the cloak in order to jump, buffer 2 jumps on consecutive frames. Just like that. That's going to let us jump over an invisible wall and into the river, so that the guard doesn't accost us for like, oh, you shouldn't be here yet. But we don't really care. So we do that to skip his dialogue and also land directly in the river. This resets our spawn point to right where we want to go. So it also saves time on movement there as well. So now that we have this really broken quest item, we haven't even seen like the major game-breaking glitch behind it yet. That's like a minor instance of what it's used for. We're going to go ahead and make our way to Illison's Glade. Now, in order to complete Act 1, which is our sort of goal up until this point, we need to go to Illisan's Glade and defeat a boss named Narfus. Now, normally you can't get to Illisan's Glade until a bridge to Illisan's Glade has been repaired, which requires a bunch of story progress flags to be cleared before that ends up happening. So you essentially have to follow the main quest in order to get to Illisan's Glade to finish the act. But we're not going to do that because of a very special trick in this game, probably the most iconic glitch in this game, which is called a ledge fly. Now, what we're going to be doing is a similar strat where we're de-equipping the cloak, but we're going to do it next to a ledge. As the screen fades to white, I'm going to hold backward and then buffer a jump input. And what this will do is it will sort of transfer the momentum from the jump into a ledge grab animation, and you'll see exactly what that causes in just a moment here. So you're going to see me pivot around, equip the cloak, circle back X, and we just go flying. And one of the awesome properties of this glitch is that it has no clip, essentially. So that lets us clip right out of bounds there, and then we're going to be able to pop back inbounds via the use of upwarping in order to get to inside of Illisan's Glade. But the nice thing is if we go to this spot, we can actually upwarp all the way up to here, which is right where sort of the boss area is. You're normally supposed to save a bunch of Meridel's guards and, like, soldiers in order to be able to get up here and activate the elevator. But we can just skip right up there by doing a couple of, not super precise, but rather specific upwarps. And then right here, we need to run over this way in order to actually get the boss to load in. So I'm going to do something really cool here called an upward ledge fly, where instead of holding backwards, I'm going to hold forwards L2 in the run button. Oh, that one didn't work. Weird. Dang, the split was really good. There we go. And this is going to cause us to start flying upwards. Ledge flies have a bunch of different properties based on how you set them up, but we do this one at an upwards angle in order to be able to fly straight into the boss trigger. And then I'm going to pop my potion of power, and then I'm going to try a quick kill strat. It's probably not going to work, but if I do this right, hopefully the boss will just melt instantly, but it's a bit inconsistent, so let's see if we get this. Oh, we actually got it. Nice. That's awesome. So if you do rapid jabs there for whatever reason, it just, like, hits the boss on back-to-back frames, and it just melts his HP instantly. And so we used the Potion of Power there because normally when you do that strat, it brings him to half health, but with the double damage from the Potion of Power, it brings him down to 0. So that boss fight successfully hits the story flag we need to be able to finish Act 1. But one of the issues is that we never opened the correct way to get into Meridel Castle. And so that's going to be kind of a problem here. And so I'm going to grab this consumable here. This is just in order to fix something for later. And then I'm actually going to go into my audio settings and turn the music back on because we need the loads to be a little bit slower here, actually, in order to get this next sequence break that we're going to do to work. So I'm going to do a ledge fly right here. This is going to get me shortly out of bounds. Going to jump right here because there's a little invisible wall right there. And then we're going to go ahead and do some more loading trigger manipulation. So normally you go through the front door in order to get into the castle, but we never unlocked that route. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to make use of a debug trigger that was left way out of bounds in Meridel Outskirts that you're never supposed to be able to access. But if you manage the loading triggers correctly, you can actually access it and use it to warp inside the Meridel Castle courtyard. So I'm going to pause the game by opening the map menu. This is going to cause some of the geometry here to load a little bit faster. Then I have to run precisely between 2 bits of loading in geometry here in order to get to where I want to go. And then I have to do a pretty precise run here after doing another upwarp in order to successfully load in the debug trigger. Should work. And then you should see a little bit of a screen flicker here. Got it. So now I turn, wait for the smoke, and then I'm going to go ahead and equip and de-equip my cloak here. This is going to get my camera unstuck from the ground, and then we end up right over here, and we can go straight through the door. All right, one more thing we got to do here before the end of Act 1. We're going to do a quick ledge fly off of this bed right here. For whatever reason, in Meridel Castle specifically, the y=0 floor is above the ground floor. So what we can actually do is just sort of hold L2 and fall into the loading trigger for the escape sequence. and then I have to do a very difficult ledge fly in order to skip the rest of this collapse sequence. It's very specific, so I'm going to be a little quiet here in order to concentrate. You need very precise positioning to get this to work. And I already got wrecked by getting hit by an enemy. Nice, we got it. Okay, cool. So you have to have a horizontal ledge fly in order for that to work. And on top of that, if your angle is too much off to either side, you'll either hit an obstacle that cancels the ledge fly or hit the floor too early. And you need a perfect angle in order to get that one to work. And you're also under fire from invincible enemies that will kill you pretty quickly. So that one's really hard. But we got there, so we're big chillin'. Yeah, so I actually need to go ahead and go into my options, audio, and turn the music back down. Gonna do a little bit of menuing, and now we're in Act 2. So this is Roberta. She is the niece of the King of Brightvale, and she wants to become a powerful sorceress. That's kind of her deal. Which is pretty neat. But this act sort of splits the two characters up, and so we don't actually have access to the Cloak of Heroes in order to do all those cool ledge flies and stuff like that. But that being said, this is like a sort of deceptive part of the run where people think it's really easy. It's actually not, because there's a lot of movement stuff that I'm doing throughout this, primarily through what's called L2 combat strafing. So holding down L2 lets you do kind of this combat strafe walk, which is kind of like Z-targeting, in which it fixes your camera and like lets you strafe in the cardinal directions. But essentially what I make use of it for is for its property where it prevents you from auto-jumping. Now, whenever you jump in this game, you actually move a little bit slower than if you were grounded. And you jump at like a set aerial speed. And that also applies to whenever you have a potion of Nurka speed active. So as a result, when I'm doing this run, I want to be grounded for as long as possible. And so because of that, if I hold on the L2 combat strafe, I can actually prevent accidental auto jumps from happening based on just random bits of the geometry in the game, which is like super important for the movement. But that being said, it can be really tricky to master L2 combat strafing, because if you move too much to the left or right, you start doing a slower side strafe animation, which doesn't save you any time. But you also can't exactly turn with the camera either, because you'll just pivot in place. So what you have to do in order to do optimal L2 combat strafing is sort of hold just outside of center, either left or right, while holding forward. And as you'll see right here, it kind of causes me to move at a diagonal. And when you're in this position, you can actually turn Roberta with the camera for whatever reason. And this is what I'm going to be using in a lot of spots in order to do pretty tricky bits of movement, especially under the influence of a Mirka Speed Potion, where it might otherwise be really annoying or tricky to constantly let go and repress L2. Because a lot of times what can happen is if you press if you let go of L2 at the wrong times, you'll break your running animation and lose some time. So there's all these tiny little things that I have to keep in mind whenever I'm doing this combat strafe stuff. It's also really nice for whenever you're like falling down somewhere, because you can actually combat strafe in order to continue running midair, which saves a bunch of time all over the place. Alright, so we were, while I was talking a bit about movement, we were collecting pieces of a wand because we left our wand at home. And so we're going to be doing bits of this tutorial. It's the same bit every time. And then we're just going to hit this book. And then between each of these different dialogues, I'm going to be holding up the consumables menu, holding down square. These are all like predictable cutscenes, so we just have it kind of memorized and queued up to go every time. So, like I said, the inventories don't merge until Act 3, so we actually have to sort of ration out our money and speed potions here. Luckily, because Roberta is of royal lineage, she actually starts out with like 1,150 Neo points, which is really nice because we can buy 2 potions of Mirka Speed from the stand right off the bat, but we only get enough money for those 2, so we have to ration these wisely. So again, it's really important, especially in Act 2, that I make good use of the L2 combat strafing in order to ensure I don't get any extra auto hops. But in parts like here, for example, where it's mostly just running in straight lines on flat ground, I really don't have to worry about it as much. But there's going to be little things like that all over the course of Act 2. But with that being said, there's not too much going on here for this next bit. I'm kind of just running from point A to point B. So like during the event, this would be a really good area for like donations, but I'm just going to like read the chat and see how everyone's doing. Hey Failson, how's it going? Stream is going really well. Finally actually able to stream without frame drops, which is pretty freaking nice. Tor really turned his blade into a chainsaw, yeah. That's pretty sick, isn't it? Also, what's up, Hux? Good to see you. So I'm not going to use a potion of Mirka Speed yet because we're going to be doing a lot of jumping in this next bit, and we want to save the potion of speed for the next big movement segment. If only there was a way to skip to Act 2. Yeah, no, unfortunately the flags and loading triggers don't really work out at the moment. The only way we'd ever see like an act skip happening is if a useful form of arbitrary code execution was discovered. Alright, so you're going to notice Roberta's quite aggressively grunting here. Essentially what I'm doing with all of these grabbables is sort of flip... Roberta, please? Is I'm kind of like mashing between up and up left or up right on the stick in order to cancel like the push, like follow through part of the animation, which sort of makes the whole pushing process a bit faster. It's a lot more noticeable on some other objects where you move more per push, which looks very funny. So we're going to hop down here and move these things over. And we'll get this one on the side here. And then as this cutscene is going, I'm holding up and to the right at a specific angle in order to walk up the stairs as I have control during that cutscene, just so I get a little bit of extra movement. So you can see I'm like all the way up the stairs here. And you see right there how I like auto-hopped at the top of the stairs. That's like one of the things you have to be careful about. In some spots, it's not really worth bothering with the L2 Comet Strafe, like when I'm going at the bottom of the stairs. But when I actually have the time to set it up, it's a really nice little time save. Because you do move ever so slightly slower when you're midair. And so now that I'm through here, this is where I'm going to pop my next potion of Mirka Speed. Because now we're just going to be running from cutscene to cutscene. There's just a lot of moments in this run as well, even if I'm not combat strafing, where I just move Roberta or Tor with the camera because it kind of allows me to split like my inputs across two thumbs, which makes it a little easier to keep track of and stuff. I'm going to also try something here since I just have more Act 2 running. I'm going to go ahead and quit the light mode here. Just because I think it'll give me a little bonus damage against the... Wait, no, it actually doesn't give me bonus damage, but it doesn't lose me any time. So this next puzzle, I think, was the bane of most people's casual play, whether they were, children or of recent. The way that you're supposed to solve this puzzle is that the statue in the center column, like, has a hand palm open, and that represents whether you're supposed to go up or down the stairs. But the nice thing is that if you know where that's going to be, because, it's a set pattern, then you can sort of flip back and forth between the two very quickly once you know where that threshold is. So we actually do that right there in order to save on a bunch of movement. Yeah, so that was a pretty unfortunate Act 2 because of some bad luck. But now we're going to be going into Act 3. So the tragic thing about Act 3, it's a really cool act, a bunch of like cool places that get unlocked and you get to go to. But Act 3 tragically ends where Act 1 ends. And if you remember, we have a way of wrong warping all the way into Meridel Castle. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to start by doing a downwards angle ledge fly here in order to get myself down to ground really quick. And this is going to let me get out of bounds and sort of around a normally required fight. And then right here, I'm going to go for a mega jump to get me out of bounds here. Nice. Got that one first try. That one might actually keep me in the running for making this a PB, because I think this is where the majority of my time save is. And so now we're going to make our way through here. And so we're going to be taking a slightly different route, but we're going to be doing the exact same setup, where we're going to hit a bit of loading geometry and then run to the loading trigger that was left in the game's files. And then we can equip and de-equip Cloak. And then we're good to go. So this would be another really great time for plugs and stuff during the run, but once we get into the castle, we get some more ridiculous nonsense. End of Act 3 is really fun. Thank you. I was a little slow, but I hit the mega jump first try, and I got the low angle ledge fly, so we should be like big chillin' saving time, so... Excuse me. Yeah. Nice gold. So there is a boss fight at the end of Act 3, which is the Darkest Faerie's like 3 triplet sisters. And we are going to completely cheese them by getting out of bounds by doing a ledge fly at a specific angle here. This is going to clip us into the side of the stairwell, and then we teleport up to here with a up warp. And this puts us right into the chamber with the 3 Faerie sisters. But the problem, for them at least, is their AI isn't activated because we did not go through all of the proper channels. So we can just wail on them. With one small caveat, they will not go down and, like, die. They can only be brought down to, like, 1 HP because, again, their AI is not working. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm bringing this one down to 1 HP. And then we're going to do these 2 right here with 3 hit combos. And then we're going to do once they are out of HP, we do a sort of weird sideways ledge fly that has some weird inputs going on to it in order to sort of displace the angle we go at. And then we're going to go right over here, activate this mob fight, and we have to do this mob fight in order to progress through here. All right, I hit one of them. Oh, I hit 2? So I'm going to be concentrating a bit here because if I do this well, I am on PB pace, so... Good fight-ish. Alright, and so from here, now that they're all, like, basically dead, I can, like, one-shot them from range. That wasn't the best split, but it was still pretty good. Yeah, so see how she just immediately died? Back in the fight. All right. And so now that we have those folks taken care of, we can go ahead and use another one of our Miracle Speed potions, and we're going to get to do a strat that we didn't get to do last time, where, just because we didn't have the potion of Miracle Speed, where we're just going to jam ourselves into the corner, and then we get an up warp, and then we just skip a bunch of the movement there. Very funny. And then we're just going to run our way towards the end of Act 3 here. And we get to go up the endless staircase again, so same strat applies. I'm a little low HP. Just gonna play it safe here. Yeah, we only have like 2 more really like critical strats that I need to hit like tech-wise in the run, and then like the color puzzle at the end. And those are like the last couple of things I'm really worried about for... Oh, that golden. Oh, yeah. Loads. So Act 4 is like a really cool part of the game, and I wish we had time to go check it out, but we're just going to skip all of it. Unfortunately. So I'm going to go ahead and do some moat management real quick, and then I'm going to do Sword Strike, Ledge Fly, and this is going to clip me into here. There's a big old elevator down here, and this takes me to the end of Act 4 immediately. Rip to Darkness strats. Yeah, that is kind of unfortunate, although it is it is possible and it is optimal to do Darkness strats for whenever you wrong warp. Because whenever you do the wrong warp into Castletown, it basically prevents you from looking around the same way as it would during the Old Darkness. And it is optimal to not go into the pause menu there and equip the cloak there. Yeah, one more Mega Jump for good measure. This is going to get us out of bounds and around and skip a bunch of movement. And then I needed one of each emote over the course of the game in order to hit all these switches. There we go. That's pretty good. No cloak has Proper Darkness. Yeah, I think so. That sounds right. Yeah, this is probably going to be close to gold too. Okay, yeah, this is probably going to world record if I don't get completely screwed at the boss here. All right, I'm going to just concentrate here instead of talking over this, if that's cool. Bruh. Oh my god. Oh, I have 2 extra potions. What the fuck? After, like, wasting one. Alright, well, I can route out 2 dupes. But yeah, new world record, everybody. Oh, yeah, Moki, you're right. GG. Okay, that's a 12 and a half second world record with commentary, so that's cool.
Because of you,
We'll take it. Everyone sucked. No, I played pretty good. In like the back half of that. You want all the credit? Yeah, you deserve credit for that hail. GG's everybody, damn. We will take improvement. Guess I have to tweet that, huh? What a concept. No! God damn it. Global hotkey strike again. It's fine. All right, we made the tweet. Woo!